So this is the start of chapter 25. And chapter 25 is on the urinary system. And as you may remember from the urinary system, this is going to include organs such as the kidneys and the ureters and the bladder, and then it also is going to include the urethra. But we're going to focus our study for the most part on the kidney because the kidney is where the urine is actually formed. So why this matters. Understanding the process of how the body eliminates waste and toxins via urine will help you better understand what's happening when the kidneys fail so you can better advise your patients with renal disease. The kidneys are a major excretory organ, and they're going to maintain the body's internal environment by doing a number of things, including regulating total water volume and total solute concentration in the water. And it's going to do this a number of ways, which we're going to talk about in a lot of detail later on. Regulating ion concentrations in extracellular fluid, ensuring long-term acid-base balance, excreting metabolic waste, toxins, and drugs. So like when we consume protein, when protein's broken down, we're going to end up with nitrogenous waste. Stuff like that needs to be excreted. Producing erythropoietin, which, as you may remember from chapter 17, regulates red blood cell production, and renin, which regulates blood pressure. It also activates vitamin D and carries out gluconeogenesis if needed. And as a reminder from chapter 24, gluconeogenesis is forming new glucose from non-carbohydrate sources like glycerol and amino acids. The kidneys are part of the urinary system, which also include the ureters, the urinary bladder, and the urethra. Now, the kidneys are the part of the urinary system that's actually going to form the urine. The ureters are going to transport the urine from the kidneys to the urinary bladder. The bladder is going to store the urine, and then the urethra is going to transport the urine out of the body. So we have a nice diagram here. We have a kidney and a kidney. You notice the kidney on the right is a little bit lower. That's because the liver crowds it. We have the ureters, which are going to carry the urine from the kidney down to the bladder. And then the urethra is going to carry the urine out of the body. Same thing here. We have the kidney, the ureter, going down to the bladder. So now we're going to look at the gross anatomy of kidneys. They are retroperitoneal, which means they sit behind the peritoneum and the superior lumbar region. They're located between T12 and L5. As I mentioned earlier, the right kidney is crowded by the liver, so it does sit a little bit lower than the left kidney. And then the adrenal glands sit atop each kidney. The lateral surface is convex and the medial surface is concave. And there's also this vertical renal hilum, which leads to the internal space called the renal sinus. And the ureters, renal blood vessels, lymphatics, and nerves enter and exit at the hilum. So you can see where the kidneys sit. So the ribs are kind of protecting the kidneys a little bit. And again, the right kidney sits a little bit lower than the left kidney because of the liver. There are 3 layers of supportive tissue around the kidney. There's the renal fascia, and this is going to anchor, and it anchors the kidney. And it's the outer layer of dense fibrous connective tissue. There's a pararenal fat, which is a fatty cushion, which will help protect the kidney, and a fibrous capsule, which is a transparent capsule that prevents the spread of infection to the kidney. So if we're looking at this, we have around the kidney itself would be the fibrous capsule. Sitting out a little bit, we would have the pararenal fat capsule, and then the fascia is going to sit on the outside. The internal kidney has 3 distinct regions. There's the superficial region, which is called the renal cortex. It has a granular appearance. Then there's the, deep to the cortex is the renal medulla. And this is composed of cone-shaped medullary pyramids or renal pyramids. Now I'm going to show you an image of this in a moment, so bear with me, but the broad base of the pyramid faces the cortex, and the papilla, or the tip of the pyramid, points internally. And then between the renal pyramids are renal columns, and then we have lobes, and this is a medullary pyramid and its surrounding cortical tissue, and there's about 8 lobes per kidney. And then the third region is going to be the renal pelvis, and this is a funnel-shaped tube that's continuous with the ureter. And then we have major and minor calyces. The minor calyces are cup-shaped areas that are just going to collect the urine that drains from the pyramidal papillae. And then the major calyces are going to be the areas that collect urine from the minor calyces, and they're going to empty the urine into the renal pelvis. So urine flow is going to go from the renal pyramid to the minor calyx, to the major calyx, to the renal pelvis, to the ureter. So we have this diagram here, and we have the outer granular appearing renal cortex, this inner medulla. This right here would be a renal pyramid. You can see the base of the pyramid is facing towards the cortex, and the tip, which is the papilla, is facing inward. We have minor calyces, and the minor calyces would be these cup-shaped little regions here. And then we have major calyces, or a major calyx here. So calyx would be singular, calyces is plural, in case you're wondering. And I've lost my cursor. Here we go. This area in here would be the renal pelvis. And then we're going to talk about blood flow. So what the kidneys are doing is the kidneys are filtering blood. So there is going to be a rich blood supply to the kidney. The renal arteries deliver about 1/4 of cardiac output to the kidneys each minute. And then arterial flow is going to go from the renal artery to the segmental, to the interlobar, to the arcuate, and then to the cortical radiate or interlobular artery. Venous flow is going to go from the cortical radiate to the arcuate to the interlobar to the renal veins. There are no segmental veins. Now, I do know that in lab, he said that there are segmental veins, but for the purpose of this textbook, there are no segmental veins. I'm not going to ask about that on the exam, though. And then nerve supply is going to be via sympathetic fibers from renal pelvis. And if you're wondering who I was referring to with he, I meant in lab. Your lab instructor said that there are segmental veins, and like I said, this textbook says that there are no segmental veins. So let's look at this diagram. We have the, no cursor, here we go, renal artery going to the segmental artery, to the interlobar artery, to the arcuate artery, and then up in here would be the cortical radiate artery. Going back, we would have cortical radiate vein, arcuate vein, interlobar vein, back to the renal vein. So there are a couple of things that are missing, and that is when we get down to the arterioles and the capillaries. So starting off, again, we would have the aorta, then the renal artery, segmental artery, interlobar artery, arcuate artery, cortical radiate artery, but then we're going to go microscopic. And then from there, we would go to the, I'm trying to find my cursor. There we go. Afferent arteriole, to the glomerulus, to the efferent arteriole, and then to the peritubular capillaries or vasa recta, and then again back up the same way we came down, cortical radiate, arcuate, interlobar, and renal with no segmental veins. Here are the questions for this particular video. And this is all I have for you.